covenant life whenever and wherever you're at. This is Pastor Andrew Newland, and this week for our Covenant Stories podcast, we have just one of my overall favorite humans, but I'm a little biased because he's one of our youth leaders as well, Mr. Matthew Holleman. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good.
So this is like 10:30 at night after a youth session, so forgive us if we sound a little tired and worn out. As always, Wednesday nights are that's just a long work day. Wouldn't you agree?
It is very, very long.
But it is work we both love doing. So today we are going to hear Matthew's covenant story. And while I've personally heard Matthew's story, I did want to make sure that this one was one where we kind of tried to navigate that line of discretion a little more conservatively. And you'll see why. His story, has just got some ups and downs that are some rough patches of life. But Matt, how are you feeling with everything?
I'm feeling good.
All right. Well, I guess we can pray and then we'll just jump right into it. Father, thank you for Matt. Thank you for everything that he does, God. You have truly created an amazing and beautiful human being who just lives to serve, and I thank you for that. Please bless this time and guide our path as we journey through Matt's story today. And God, I just ask you to reach through the sound waves and just help this story speak to whoever it is out there that's listening that needs to be spoken to through this. God, we love you and we praise you. In your son's name, amen. All right, so Mr. Matthew, the usual thing that we do is we've got like a before you came to Christ, how you came to Christ, and after you came to Christ. Now, some people grew up in church, things are different, but in the early parts of your story, where would you like to begin?
Well, let me just preference first off, this isn't going to be a deep dive in my whole story.
Yeah.
If I did that, it would take a very long time, and there are some things that I'm not comfortable sharing on a public platform. So that's kind of my disclaimer.
Yeah, it's completely understandable. Yeah.
I grew up in Flint, Michigan. Actually, I grew up in a suburb of Flint, Michigan. I just tell people Flint because most people, that's where they know.
Yeah, that's same with me. Oklahoma, so I'm like, yeah, Muskogee, Tulsa. That's all people know.
Yeah, so I grew up in a half-Christian home. My dad wasn't a believer. My mom was.
Interesting.
The earliest I remember going to church, I grew up in a Pentecostal church where I remember people getting filled with the Spirit and running around and all the things that you do in a
waving flags, dancing, all that fun stuff.
in a Pentecostal church.
Yeah.
So I had a good childhood. I have an older brother who lives in Michigan still. He's a radio DJ over in Michigan. He's an older brother, so you know how the things were with,
yeah.
You know how brothers are. They pick on each other, and normally it was him picking on me. And one of the memories that we joke about is I used to say, "Shut up, Josh," like all the time because he would just pick on me. But we had a good relationship, good family dynamic. We struggled financially, like every family does. But I had a grandmother that really helped us out with Christmas, with birthdays. So I had a really good upbringing.
Nice. Was it both sides of your family lived up there in Michigan? Like mother and father sides? As far as grandparents and everything?
My mom's parents died before I was born, so I didn't really know them. My mom's mom was when I was little, like a baby, but I don't remember her.
I got you.
My grandmother on my dad's side is the one I was talking about.
Oh, nice.
So, like I said, I grew up in a Pentecostal church. My early teen years, like I said, I made some bad decisions, and we'll just leave it at that.
Don't know.
But I remember got in some trouble and got depressed and so I went through some time with depression. I'm trying to be very careful how I say things, but went through some depression, and at the age of 13, I rededicated my life to the Lord.
Nice.
Started going to a new school, and during that time that I rededicated, our church had actually shut down. So it was this kind of a blow. Like I had just rededicated my life to the Lord.
Yeah,
but
and that momentum kind of...
Yeah, and then... so we were looking for a church, and I landed at... let me remember here. LWF, which is Living Water Fellowship. And actually, that's the church where I met Della at.
Interesting.
And we dated, if you want to call it
church
dated.
Version of dated.
Yeah. We dated for, I don't know. I don't remember, but it wasn't long. And
was that church also Pentecostal?
it was more non-denominational, but it kind of
flavors of it.
Yeah, it had flavors of.
So the reason I ask is because this may be kind of weird, but a lot of times we think of the Pentecostal denomination being a heavily Southern type of thing. And so from my experience, at least, which is not a lot, I didn't live up north, but I've traveled up north a lot. It doesn't seem to be as predominant up north, like as far as, finding a Pentecostal church on every corner like you do down here.
Yeah, I feel like, and I could be wrong because I've been here for almost 11 years now, but I feel like there's a lot more Baptist and structured, I guess.
Liturgical.
Liturgical is a better word.
That's what I had thought. I've spent a lot of time up in New England, and obviously Catholicism is a lot more predominant up there, and a lot more liturgical type denominations are. So it's just interesting to me to hear that you were born and kind of raised in a Pentecostal church up north. I just, those seem to be rare, at least in my mind. Anyway, sorry about that. Go on.
No, you're good. No, it's all good. We went to, from Beulah Land, we went to LWF, and that was actually the church that shut down.
Yeah. Well, LWF was the church that shut down right when you'd rededicated?
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, so, after that had shut down, we went and we were church hopping. You know how it goes when you're church hopping, trying to find a place. And we went to a church called Mount Hope, which is actually where I went for a good portion of my life. And I remember going to youth group there. And you know me, I'm even... Then I was kind of antisocial and a little bit more reserved. Yeah. And so it was just so easy to make friends because it was and I looking back now, I see why, but the youth pastor there was very he wanted it to be the most friendly place on earth,
relationship oriented,
very relational oriented. Yeah. And so it was really easy to make friends, and I knew as soon as I started at Mount Hope that was where we needed to be. And my mom and them came, but they didn't really stick around. And they went for a while, but it was home for me. Yeah. And so I got involved with youth. We did some of the highlights was we did retreats, and I loved the retreats. we did a winter one and a summer one. And then we did a program that really shaped my life, was Master's Apprentice. We called it MAs. And MAs was in the summertime, and it was a month-long discipleship program where we traveled, we did service projects, we did team building exercises, we did calisthenics every morning where you had to run around the church, and if you didn't beat the time that you ran the day before, you did push-ups. And I mean, it was like,
I like that. We need to get that going here, huh?
Yeah, it was a very, very intense, and we did like book studies and all the things that you don't want to do in the summertime. Well, we did them.
I think that's a beautiful thing.
It is.
Well, one, I'm a former basketball coach, so I see a lot of value in high intensity learning.
Yeah.
Jumping full immersion, and then also like we talked about tonight, this Wednesday night, about building the habit of getting in God's Word. A lot of times you in the world today, and it wasn't that long ago when you were a teenager, it wasn't as easy to build habits as generations before. And so having something that was a month long, like a habit, minimum required amount of time to build a habit is 21 days, but you need about 30 to 40 to really sink it in. And so to me, that's a beautiful thing, because it really, gets you, it kind of jumpstarts you in that summertime for something that you can hold year round.
Yeah. Yeah. And the first time I did it, I was not a kid who liked particularly doing exercising and all that. And I was not the slimmest kid, we'll just put it that way. I was kind of a fatty. And so I was very hesitant at first to do the program, because they were like, oh, we're going to do exercising and you'll get to, and I'm like,
Well, that speaks a lot to how extremely valuable the relationships were for you there. Because if you were able to overcome as a teenager something that all teenagers are insecure and self-conscious about, and do it because the relationships were so valuable to you and what you were getting out of it was so valuable, that speaks a lot.
Yeah. And so I did that. I think I did it all 4 years of high school.
Wow.
And then my senior year, I did it like the year after I graduated. I did it. So I did it basically five years.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, some of the most amazing times in worship and some of the most amazing friends that I've built out of the Master's Apprentice program and my relationship with the Lord. Yeah. It was one of the most foundational things.
You just foundation building, because this may sound a little weird, but like I said, I'm a basketball coach, so forgive me, but pain in any capacity, whether it be spiritual, like really going through some stuff spiritually, physical, emotional, like all that stuff bonds you not only to people that you go through it with, but also with the Lord. Like if you're able to go through something that tests you spiritually, tests you physically, tests you emotionally, you're going to create a bond with everyone who is involved in that and God. I don't think you're trying to sell me on this, but it's selling me as far as something I think would be extreme.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to talk to you about it. Yeah. And maybe we can implement it some way for that. But anyway, fast forward.
So 4 years of high school.
4 years of high school.
Okay, you're building pretty strong.
Building strong. Walk with God. Good relationships, and.
Now, was that depression still lingering during that time frame, or was that something that you had kind of gotten through after those early teenage years?
No. It was one of those things where when I it was still there, but it started to kind of fade.
Your faith walk overpowered it. Yeah, that's good. So I was at church. I mean, probably more than I was home. Once I got involved in, I think I spent
Oh, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Saturdays, Sundays, sometimes more than, I mean, I was just like, if I wasn't home in school, I was at the church. So.
Sounds like your life now, except just replace school with work.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so those two things, and then I had amazing youth pastors. The first one was Pastor Brad Swartout. He was very monumental in shaping my life. And then Pastor Joe Mead was actually the pastor that married Della and I.
Oh, nice.
So he
traveled all the way down here. Did y'all get married?
No, we got married in Michigan, okay. So it wasn't far for him to travel. Okay. But those two, and then some of the other leaders that helped really form that in my life and really helped me to grow in the Lord were, I mean, just, I think this is my preference. I think every teen in America should go to a youth group because it will change how they view people. It will change how they walk with people, how they build their relationship with the Lord. I mean, if you have that support system, you can get through anything.
Yeah, and that's exactly the type of stuff that we really hone in on here. The tough part about it is the reality of the world that we live in now is that there's this weird stigma around church and youth groups and this, that, and the other. Kind of, it's similar to the type of stigma that like therapy and counseling get. It's weird how the human being, whenever something's meant at its core function to help you, we develop these weird, like, man, I don't need this, and oh, that's weird, that's just for blah, blah, blah. Because the reality is, like, that's our main struggle today in youth is, like, just reaching kids that don't want to be reached. And it stinks because the world that we live in is really teaching them to grow up and become people who don't want help, because then that's a lot easier to sell you things, to, like, you know, build up bad habits that end up making you the type of consumer that the world wants you to be. And it's a rough world to live in, but that is the tough reality. I wish every kid had a youth group too, man. It would be amazing, but we just got to fight that fight.
Yeah,
and really
definitely.
Get out there and make it happen.
Yep. So I got involved. I went through youth group. I was but we had different tier systems. I was a student leader at first, and then once I graduated, or maybe before that, I can't remember for sure, but once I kind of went more like senior year, I graduated up to a actual support team leader, which was a tier above our student leader, and then we had core leaders, which were, you know, like adults and some of the like department leads, and, you know.
How large was your youth group?
I would say, and this is just a
guesstimate probably,
because it's been years ago.
Yeah.
I would say we probably averaged maybe 30 to 60. Okay. And that's just a rough guess.
Yeah. It's hard when you think back, because when you're little, everything seems big.
Yeah.
I was just interested because there's two types of kids that I find. Kids that want to be involved in a really big youth group so that they can kind of slip under the radar and not go noticed, or kids that really kind of just gravitate towards like a smaller youth group because the relationships are a lot more like sturdy and solid, and you're able to have one-on-one time with people and stuff. So I was just interested.
It wasn't like real small. I would say medium.
Yeah, medium size.
It was a medium-sized youth group.
You were the best of both worlds there.
Yeah. So anyway, I grew up, I went through the different leader positions, tiers. Never made it to core, but it's all right. I don't need to. But I got involved with tech, obviously.
You're a tech guru.
So I got involved in tech, and that's where I learned how to do sound. I learned the media. I learned all of the things that you do in the tech booth, and kind of became not really the tech leader, but like tech assistant, maybe like an assistant to the tech leader.
Assistant to the regional technology director.
Yeah. And so I did that. I was kind of helping with making the schedules for the different positions, and just doing that thing. And then I would kind of flip-flop because I had an interest in tag, but I always also loved worship. And so I would I'd play piano, or I taught myself how to play piano, and had a good choir teacher who taught me some basics, and I kind of just ran with it. And
interesting right brain, left brain kind of tug of war you had going on there between creativity and technology and analytics and stuff.
So I would kind of pull double, and I would do like tech one week, and I would do worship. I played piano on the worship team, and so I had this internal struggle of like which one I really liked more, and I couldn't decide, so I did them both. And
so that sparks a question in my brain, because I'm thinking of people out there that could potentially learn from your story. So somebody who couldn't decide, so did both. Do you feel like that was the right choice, or you feel like maybe one took away from the other? Looking back, how do you feel about that decision?
Looking back, I probably should have just picked one and stuck with it, just because I feel like I would have been able to give myself more to it and kind of learn and develop the craft a little bit better. But at the time, I kind of...
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because churches have a lot of different needs. You're trying to, especially you're like have such a servant's heart that, you're trying to fill the things that need to be filled. But I do always wonder, because that is a dilemma that I think will always be there as far as human beings are concerned, is just feeling like there's a tug of war between two different desires. And even in this way, where it's like a desire to serve in two different capacities, which is a great thing. Yeah. That's what I always wonder is like, all right, well, how does somebody reconcile that? How do you work through that? Looking back on it, would you do things different? So I just feel like if there's something to learn there, and you may have learned it, you'd be a good person to talk to.
And I think you and I have talked about that extensively.
It's tough,
And so, so I think I probably should have just picked one and stuck with it. But at the time, hindsight's 20/20. Right. So, so I did that. And then, so we'll go up to...
So all high school years, so we're moving a little past high school.
We'll move a little past high school. I graduated in 2008. I struggled with school. It was one of those things where I was smart, but I struggled with like work and discipline to do my work.
Motivation.
Yeah, motivation.
I resonate with that. Yeah.
And so like school was tough for me. It was very tough. And so I did graduate with 3.1 GPA, which I'm very, very proud of. And I graduated with honors. So I graduated high school and didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like I knew I probably should have preferenced this, but when I was 13, when I rededicated, about 2 weeks later, I felt the call to ministry. Okay. And so I knew I had that, but I didn't know what avenue.
Yeah, there's a lot of avenues
that I wanted to go down. I was looking at a program called Master's Commission, which is kind of like an Assemblies of God. Think like nowadays, like maybe like Bethel School of Ministry, or it was like a 9-month or 13-month program where you trained and you took college classes to get your ministry credentials, and you could like specialize in what areas you wanted to go into and that sort of thing. Okay. And so I was looking at that. I was going to go out to Los Angeles and get involved with that one. And I didn't know how I was going to do it because I didn't have any money, and flying out to LA and trying to find a place to live and all that.
It's a very expensive part of the country.
So we'll back a little bit. When I was in youth group, I found this girl that I kind of had a crush on, and we couldn't date because my youth pastor had a rule that if you were over 18, you couldn't date anybody under 18 for obvious reasons. And so I had to wait till she was 18 and we started dating, and she was graduating high school and I had already graduated. And so we decided to, she was going to Cornerstone University in Grand Rapids. And so I just kind of like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. So we'll just go to, we'll go to college. And so we ended up dating for I think we dated for 13 months. And we ended up breaking up. And so for obvious reasons, I transferred out of that college and into a different one. I went to Grace Bible College, which is now Grace Christian University in Wyoming, Michigan, which is outside of Grand Rapids. And so I went there. I made some amazing friends. Had a really good, so it's kind of weird. I grew up Pentecostal, and actually Cornerstone was a Baptist college, which is
ends of the spectrum,
way opposite ends of the spectrum. And so I went to Grace and found out that college probably wasn't for me.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because you had said you had struggled in school, and I resonate with that because I don't have control of my motivation on-off switch. And I never have in school. I could not motivate myself to study and do things that I wasn't naturally motivated to do. So I was very interested. Luckily, I had a similar thing where I was smart enough to kind of, get by and everything without too much difficulty. But just the act of being in school and trying to do things that I was not motivated to do was also a struggle. So I was interested in how your college experience was.
Yeah, my college, I didn't do well. I struggled, and actually when I left Grace, I was actually on academic suspension, and and I actually appealed it, and they were going to let me come back, and but I struggled. I didn't have the motivation to really do the work, and and so I was also the experience of going away and living on my own, and having to do laundry and all that stuff. And so it was tough, and so I would stay up all night and do classwork, or sometimes stay up all night and play Call of Duty, and but it was tough. And so when I left Grace, actually I left, I'll go back a little bit. Before I went to Grace, I went to the last retreat that I went to with the youth group, which was our summer retreat. And so when I went to the summer retreat, I actually took all my clothes and everything, and they just dropped me off because it was on the west side of the state. So they just dropped me off. And so that was 2011, I think it was. And so when I went away to college, actually Della's family reunions are always on the west side of the state, and their family is pretty big, so they actually rent a campground and do a reunion over September.
Wow.
Over Labor Day.
Yeah.
And so her dad called me out of the blue and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna pick you up. Do you want to go to this reunion with us?" And I'm like, "Sure." I mean,
Your relationship with Della was fairly minimal, right? Like you had a crush on each other early on in your teenage years.
And we had stayed in contact with each other for over those years, and it wasn't like we just stopped talking, and we had stayed in contact with each other. And her dad was actually my youth pastor. I forgot to mention that.
Ah, there's the connection. Okay, I get you.
So her dad was our youth pastor growing up, and so we had always stayed in connection with each other.
More than just like a regular relationship with that family. I got you. That makes sense.
And so I had just gotten out of that last relationship, and so I was like, okay, well, I'll go hang out. I don't have nothing to do. Classes haven't started yet, and so I was just like, well, I don't know anybody at this place, so we'll just so I went to the reunion, and we spent the whole reunion together, and so it was kind of like that little click, spark happened, and I asked her out a couple times, and she, for lack of better words, said that she was going to pray about it, and which is fine, I'd rather her pray about it than just say but
yeah.
And I always joke with her that she friend zoned me, and she gets all mad and stuff. But anyway, so we they were gung ho. Her dad and some of the family friends were like, "Hey, I'm a pastor. I'll marry you right now." And I'm like, "Pump your brakes here. We're obviously you're moving way too fast." So that was September. I went back to college, and I want to say they were living here in Georgia. Yeah, because they moved here in 2007, so they were living here. And so we started dating in 2011, December of 2011, and we dated long distance for from December 2011 until July.
So long distance. So we were both originally from Michigan.
We're both originally from.
Her and her family moved down here to Georgia?
Yeah, they moved down here to Georgia, and I was still living in Michigan, and so we dated.
Yeah, I got you.
And so I couldn't do it any longer. We started dating, and I dropped out of college and moved down here. And really, I think I was it was mainly for her, but it was mainly to kind of get away from the situation that was going on at home.
Like home with family?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll go back, and I'm sorry for going back and forth, but I'm just trying to kind of make it all connect. And in 2008, I graduated. 2008, 2009. I'm a little fuzzy on because it was just so long ago that my parents went through a divorce, and my dad actually cheated on my mom, and so it was this whole thing.
That was right after you graduated?
Yeah, it was right after I graduated. So it was I graduated, everything was good. I was going off to college, and it was 2 years before I went to college, because it was she had graduated in 2010, and so there was a 2-year gap in between me graduating and me going to college. And so around 2008, 2009, my parents split up, and it was the most devastating thing, because we had always been,
you said you had a good family dynamic.
We had a good family dynamic, and so it was tough because, it's like when a parent leaves, you don't really know what to do, because especially with the family dynamic, it's tough to navigate. And so like I remember being like totally shocked, and with the whole divorce thing, it's like, which parent do I go live with? And then it was even to the point of like I had to kind of walk on eggshells.
Yeah.
Because
it's like one world turned into two different worlds, and you're stuck in this in-between area trying to figure out how to stay connected to both worlds without trying to interfere and make them collide with one another.
And so like I was constantly walking on eggshells because my mom didn't want my dad knowing where she lived, and like my dad wanted to know information, and I didn't want to give information, and I didn't want to be a middleman of, and I was stuck in the middle, whether I wanted to or not. It was a tough thing.
So in this spot right here, it's another spot where I'm just kind of feeling a little spirit tug to ask a question that may be able to help some people. So you just described what I would say is an extremely common occurrence when divorce happens, which is the kids, through no fault of their own, get stuck in a place where they don't want to be and they don't know what to do. Looking back on that time, is there any kind of advice that you learned or can see now that you might be able to share with anybody who may be in that situation? I mean, that's a tough one to throw you on the spot there, but it's just one of those that's like, you lived through a tough moment there, and so there might be other people in that same kind of situation.
I really don't know how to.
Well, how did you handle it?
The way I did is, like I said, I had that support system at youth, and so that was my go-to, and I had some people that I could talk to, and so that's kind of that. I guess would be what I would say is find people that you can talk to,
that support system
and
that holds you up.
That support system, and pray your guts out. Was the other one. And so
the divorce happened.
And
and then we can jump back kind of forward. So 09-ish divorce happened, and then we can jump back forward to where you had went to the family reunion with Della's family, but that was a couple years after that divorce, so they had been separated for a while, and so now we're
2010. So the divorce was finalized, I think, 2009. I don't know because I don't really know the details of everything, but the divorce was finalized. My dad was still, they were living in separate places, and like I said, I was kind of the middle man. And so it was basically like it was trying to get away from all of the walking on eggshells, and
so you'd move down here to try and extricate yourself from that whole scenario.
And so my mom had met another guy, and she basically told me that this was how she needed to move on. And so she met another guy, and it was like it moved quickly, into dating and then engagement, and then they eventually got married.
About what time did that happen?
That was 2010.
Okay, so like just right at the tail end of that
right
whole
at the
thing.
tail end of it. And so it was like 2009, 2010-ish. And so when this is what I will say is, divorce sucks. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for anybody to go through, not just the people that are getting divorced, but
everybody
who's attached to the family suffers. And so my mom got married remarried on August 21st, 2010. And I remember that because it was the happiest, saddest day of my life. So we'll go back 2 weeks before that day. I was living at my dad's, and we had kind of gotten into a argument over a situation, and I don't want to go into that, but we had gotten into an argument, and so my dad got mad and kicked me out.
This is 2 weeks before that.
Yeah, two weeks before her wedding, and it may have been a little longer, but I think it was around 2 weeks. So we got in this argument, and he had to go to work. At that time, he was working split shifts, so he was like morning to morning and then afternoon to afternoon. And so, like, he told me that I had to be out of the house by the time he got out of work. Yeah. And so I remember calling my mom, like, Dad just kicked me out. Like, I was crying. Like, I literally had to put all my stuff in trash bags. Goodness. And so, like, I remember my brother coming over and helping me, and the girl that I dated coming over and helping me, and we got everything moved out to my mom's house. And so we'll go back to the wedding. I walked my mom down the aisle. You know, it was supposed to be me and my brother. Yeah. Walking her down the aisle. Well, I remember my brother pulling in to where they had the wedding and then, like, backing out and leaving. And I'm like, what? You know, like, what's going on? So I called him and I'm like, you know, like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? And his phone went to voicemail, so I left him a message.
And there wasn't any, like, he had no reason to not want to be involved in the wedding or anything.
No. And so, like... So we had to go on with the wedding. So I walked my mom down the aisle and she got remarried and everything. And then I remember going into where she got ready for the wedding. They had a camper set up because they had an outdoor wedding. So they had a camper set up for, like, changing and all that and makeup. And so my mom called me into that camper, and she had told me that my dad had shot himself.
Was this before or after the actual ceremony?
It was after the ceremony.
Gotcha.
And I remember just, like, collapsing.
I cannot imagine.
And so I just collapsed. And, I mean, like, it was like my whole world shattered again. And so I remember my girlfriend was there, and so we jumped in the car and drove up to the hospital. And I had to look at my dad with a bandage over his head. Luckily, he had survived. But I had to look at him, and I couldn't even say anything. I walked in the room, and I remember walking in the room, and I said, "Dad," and I had to walk back out because I couldn't say anything. There was no words. Gracious. And so I remember, or when I was going up to the hospital, I called my youth pastor, and it was like just shock. Like, I didn't know what to do. Complete I didn't know how to react or anything. So Dad went through a bunch of surgeries and all the things that are involved with that. But he slipped into a pretty heavy depression. Mm-hmm. And so it was like trying to be there for him, and because he wasn't saved, but I remember through the years I would pray that he would come to know the Lord, and And so when he did that, it was 2010. And so fast forward, he went 4 more years and with surgeries. And so he went 4 years, and the saving grace and all that was he actually at the end gave his heart to the Lord.
Wow.
And so I got to see this horrible, ugly, devastating thing. The Lord worked it out to where it was, the Lord had saved him. And 2014, he passed away.
From like complications with everything?
It was, we don't know for sure.
I got you.
My opinion is he may have gotten confused because he was on a lot of medications. And so I think he may have gotten confused with some of his medications. And
I'm assuming that through that like 4-year time span, I mean, my guess would be that there's no like full recovery from something like that, that it was probably like a, ongoing trying to, do the best you can to deal with everything.
Yeah, he was, very self-conscious of how he looked and, like paying for surgeries because we didn't have, I mean, he got on some, insurance, but it wasn't anything.
I can't imagine how substantial those would be.
And so that's kind of my story.
So, and that happiest, saddest day is a contrast. I don't think anyone on earth, unless they have some kind of similar experience, could really grasp. And so from that experience, how has that shaped you since then?
I mean, I really, during that experience, it really gave me a dependency on my Heavenly Father. Yeah. Because when you have my dad he was a good man. Yeah. He would have been a better man if he was a godly man, but he did the best he could. And he did what he knew, and he was a good father. But I really, when that's stripped away, it really gives you a dependency on the Lord, and it really creates a deeper intimacy with the Lord. And I really feel like, people that go through that have a richer, deeper relationship with their Heavenly Father. Yeah,
I mean, pain bonds, whether it be with people or spiritual. So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't write much down during that talk, but did you say that he had, since the divorce and everything, that he was going through depression, or is that something?
Something he struggled with, I think, until the end.
But did it stem from that divorce or everything, or was it something he struggled with? So that moment kind of sparked something in him that he started struggling with?
And near the end, I think the Lord was working on his heart. Yeah. When he got saved, when he gave his heart to the Lord, it was starting to kind of not really subside, but he was starting to heal a little bit. Yeah. And so that was kind of me trying to get away from a situation, that was... Yeah,
so we jump back forward where you had moved to be closer to Della and get away from... So I moved
to be closer to Della and to get away from my situation at home.
Up there, because I would imagine that it would just be... To go through something like that, I really can't figure out in my head a way to try and get closure while being so close to it. That would, I mean, I'm sure it's possible. I'm sure God would help a ton, obviously, but there's something to be said for being able to step away and get out of just the immediacy of the reality of it that could probably allow you to try and find some kind of closure. And then that coincides, I would call that a God moment to like bring Della back into your life, and he knew she was the one you would end up with, and, give you an opportunity to come down here, step away from all that, find some, as much peace as you can with that situation, but also grow closer to her. So you move down here. Let's finish this thing out.
So we'll finish this out. So we dated, like I said, from December 2011 until July. Actually, one of my uncles had passed away, and a lot of my families grew up near Arkansas, and so some of my family's from Arkansas, and so the funeral was actually in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And so we traveled to Arkansas, and like Della and I were kind of toying around with the idea of well, let me go back. Like when we dated from December to March. March, I decided that I wanted to, we had been talking about, early on, had been talking about marriage, because when you know, you know.
Yeah, and when the family knows, apparently.
Yeah, when the family knows, and so we had been talking about marriage, and so March of 2012, I was still at Grace, and I knew that I wanted to marry her. Didn't have a ring, and so I acquired a ring, and I took a 19-hour Greyhound bus ride because I didn't have a car because I was a broke college kid.
Yeah.
And so I took a 19-hour bus ride, stayed here in Georgia for a week, and she had no idea that I had a ring in my pocket.
Did her parents know?
No. So when I got here, her sister and I kind of cooked up a ruse to get her away from the house so that I could actually talk to her mom and dad about it. And and her dad, like, I'll preference, her dad always told her that I was going to be the one that she would marry. And even like when we were away from each other. And so we, like we had stayed in contact, but her dad always said it. Even when I was dating the other girl, her dad always said it. And so that was like the easiest talk that I had. Like,
that's the talk that almost every guy is scared of.
Every guy dreads. And I still...
And you're just like, all right, I know, you're right. You know what?
And I was still nervous. Like, it's very nerve-wracking when you have to ask a dad for permission to marry his daughter. And so, but it was the easiest thing. Like, so I asked her, I said, I've got a ring in my pocket. I'd like to, marry your daughter. I'd like, I don't remember what I said, but it was something general like that. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, and
said about time.
Yeah, about time. Literally, he said about time. And so it was like the next day, we took her over. I went over to actually Cloudland Canyon is where I proposed to her. We walked down the waterfall and it had just rained, so it was just like a full. And
something really weird. That conversation with my wife's dad, I had at Cloudland Canyon.
Really?
Yeah, that is odd.
That is odd. That's strange.
Anyway, sorry, go on. But, beautiful full waterfall.
Beautiful full waterfall, and she was looking at the waterfall, and I dropped to one knee and held the ring out, and I feel like it was for an eternity. And you know how it is when you're on your knee and you're like, come on, turn around, and so I said, Della, and so she turned around and I said my spiel and, will you marry me? And she's like, so you talked to my dad? And I'm like, yeah, like I talked to your dad. And, to this day we joke about it, but I don't remember her saying yes. And, but we laughed, and I had to take her to work because she worked at a daycare, and so we went to I proposed, and then we went to Wendy's and got breakfast, and then I took her to work. So it was like,
fairy tale right there.
Yeah, fairy tale.
So happily ever after. When did you start coming to Covenant? Was that before or after y'all had gotten married?
We started we started in 2014, so it was after we got married. And so we were going to a Nazarene church. I was involved again with tech and worship team. It's just, And so when we were going there, and the pastor was phenomenal. It was a Nazarene church in Lookout Valley, and so we went there, and the pastor had actually left and decided to go to another church, and they were getting ready to install a new pastor, and we were kind of feeling like it was time to move on. So Della and them had come to Covenant before. They were involved with a ministry called Jeremiah Junction, and so I think they came. I don't remember. I'd have to ask her, but they were going before, and then they went to it. It was just kind of a...
But you pretty much kind of been here since then.
Yeah. And so...
Happily ever after, right?
Happily ever after.
And you're tech and help with all kinds of stuff here, too. You're just that tech guy. Well, obviously anybody listening could never have guessed the type of event that somebody like you has gone through. Because, still to this day, you're a lot, more mature, but that shy kind of kid is still in there. So you're not, shaking babies and kissing hands or however that goes all the time or whatever. So, whenever you first told me this story, it just kind of shook me that's something that not only you had been through, but you live with.
Yeah.
And so, you being willing to share that with other people and giving people who may have traumatic life experiences some hope to see that, like, hey, get your support system, pray your guts out, and, God will take care of you. I just appreciate you being willing to come and share that with us. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts before we sign this thing off?
I think I'm good.
I like it. I like that, though. Support system and pray your guts out. That might be the title of this one.
Yeah.
So I'll pray us out, and we will sign off for this episode. Father, thank you for Matt. Again, just thank you for his servant's heart, and thank you for bringing him to us through all of this journey that he has been through. Lord, whoever happens to be listening to this and needs to get something from this, God, I just ask that you, through your revelation, just show them that they can be okay, no matter what the situation, no matter how dark, no matter how contrasting it is, if we just pray our guts out and have the support system around us that you place there, God, that it'll be okay. Lord, I thank you again for Matt and just the blessing that he is to our church and to all of us who know him. We love you and we praise you in your son's name. Amen. All right. Well, this has been Pastor Andrew and Matt Holleman for episode 5 of the Covenant Stories podcast. Appreciate you, Matt.
Yeah, not a problem.
Have a good one, buddy.